I just want to introduce Kristina and Rikko. They're very, very long time friends of mine and training buddies from way back. And we've experienced a lot of Birankai Aikido and Chiba Sensei over the years. And they were particularly influential helping Sensei find and get his third dojo going, and on Fairmount Avenue. Was that 1990?
90, yeah.
1990, yeah.
1990, okay. So
Yeah,
they have a lot of great stories about what it was like. It was a wonderful space for Sensei because he was able for the first time to live on the property. And he also, I think he really refined and developed more strongly his Kenshusei program at that time. So Kristina is a Birankai Shihan, and she's also the technical director of Aikido of Kohala. And Rikko is a Birankai Shidoin and the president of Birankai International. So I'm going to start the video. I'm starting in a little bit, it's quite long. It's, oh, I didn't tell you what it was.
Let me say a few things, Coral, if you don't mind. Yeah, I'd like to, bring in that Fairmount Dojo where, as you said, Sensei, I think also just, he blossomed with a life that he was so happy to have that dojo and to have that space to create. And I think at that time, the Kenshusei program really developed into a dynamic system, which he had, formally, which he had really longed for. And I don't remember exactly the need, why we moved from University Avenue to Fairmount, but I remember at one point him saying, or we started to look for a building, and he saw this one, and he turned to Rikko and I and he said, "Get me this dojo, get me this space." And when Sensei says something, it's
but he also yeah, he said very clearly, that he wanted this ideal, but he was look for my dream. That was our mission. Go out and fulfill his dream.
Yeah.
And not only did he and his family live there, but then Kenshusei had their own living quarters upstairs as well.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we can continue this and have as the background the first DVD of the 5th Q test guidelines, 4th and 5th Q. And they're very interesting. I'm muting it, so it's just going to be an image. And then if anybody at some point has a question, or we can stop and look at something, that's fine. But okay, let me see. Here we go. And now I have to say share screen, and there it is. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So these are the beginning
don't stop
of
talking.
This is the beginning of Sensei's. We filmed his conditioning exercises with various tai sabaki and weapons practice. So this leads into the beginning of the 5th Q Waza.
And just as a layout of the dojo, this being the shomen, and behind that wall was the kitchen and dressing rooms, and then above that wall, higher up, were the Kenshusei quarters. It was a huge space. What was the mat space there, Coral?
I don't know, but it was the biggest one he had. It was huge.
About 2,500 square feet. Yeah.
Well, at the other end of the dojo, he had his apartment upstairs, so it was, it was that big.
Exactly.
All of it.
And below that was the office and entrance. When people came in, there was an office right there.
Do you know how many Kenshuseis could have lived there or did?
Well,
There were Frank and
six, Yahe, Ismail.
Josh.
There's
was
a half a dozen to 8.
Josh, yeah.
Josh, 8 of us maybe.
But as I remember going up there, it was a low ceiling. It was very tight quarters.
Yeah, I remember throwing knives in there with all my brothers and sisters was very dicey.
How many years were you in this location?
4 years. Well, we were in the program 4 years. We were in Fairmount for actually 4 years. Yeah. Well, no, excuse me. We were in the University Avenue for 2 years, and then we moved from 89 to 90, and then from 90 to 92, we were in this dojo at Fairmount Avenue.
No, but did you mean, Garrett, did you mean how long Sensei had this dojo?
Yeah, in this particular location, yeah. How long was Sensei there for?
6 years? 8 years?
Coral, do you remember when we moved to Adam Street?
No, I don't. But I know the reason for it, and you know the reason that he had to suddenly get out. It was really very sad, actually.
Right.
Everything was going so well for him and for the school.
Yeah.
The city took it away, right?
Exactly.
To create a police department.
Yeah, they wanted to use what do they call that when?
Condemnation.
Yeah.
And this building was built by the Carpenters Union of San Diego. Yeah. It was so beautifully constructed.
And solid.
Sensei loved this.
I remember when he saw it, he said, "Get me that dojo."
Yeah. And remember the cat used to come across on the...
The cat is in this.
Oh, is he in this? Yeah.
Yeah, you see him briefly.
And it was a full-on, I don't know if people are interested in hearing about it, but if you wanted to, it was a full-on course of being Deshi and being Kenshusei curriculum from early morning to late night. Every day of the week except Sunday afternoon we were off. That was the only time in 4 years for us that we were free.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had cooking classes, macrobiotic cooking classes with Mrs. Chiba in the back.
I did take some of those.
Yeah, and Sensei, he was, you know, so much of what we know of Sensei is on the mat, at summer camp, yet so much of what Sensei was giving at this time was also his socialness, his part of himself that was in the kitchen with us cooking, telling us stories, relating to us as human beings that I think a lot of people that weren't in the program or around him at this time when he was, I think he felt fulfilled in his environment, his Aikido, his students that were around him.
In odd hours of the morning or the day, he could practice by himself or with us or any of the deshi. I mean, it was fascinating. We had started the day with Iaido. We had meditation. We then body arts. There were healing, not healing. There were first aid classes that were sometimes very unusual.
Do you remember those, Coral?
Someone would get injured first.
Yes.
And then we would wrap them up in bandages and egg yolks and
oh yes, egg yolks or the skin of raw eggs.
Right.
Right.
It was fascinating. It was a unique time.
He lived his life. It didn't matter whether it was on the mat or off. He had that same intensity all the time, and
yes,
you know, his life was his practice, not just the dojo.
Yeah, well, like Didier Sensei said last week, how he was always practicing and developing himself.
Yeah.
You can see that clearly in this video.
Mhm.
He's working his body. He's working his mind.
Yeah, he never stopped.
No.
Unusual. His commitment was on all the time. And we had people coming in and for various lengths of times and visits, even at the University Avenue and Fairmount, and subsequently in Adams Avenue, from all over the world. So it's very dynamic culturally for all of us.
Well, then there were also a lot of people would come, but a lot of people would leave rather quickly too.
Screaming out the doors.
Running away. No, I think people that stayed, we all, it had a deeper meaning than what you could see. It was what you felt from him and what the atmosphere was. What all our relationship was with each other and with Sensei and his family.
I think there's a really important comment that I'd like to make. As you view these instructional guidelines and in any of Sensei's work, whether you've seen it, been there, taken it, or view it, he was quite clear from the very beginning when we joined in '89, and throughout all of his life with us, that as vigorous and rigorous as he and we trained, he also was quite clear to emphasize training at different levels with beginners, with people who had handicaps or disabilities, people of different ages. And he was amazing in his flexibility to encourage us to train at all of those different levels and different situations. And I must say that that's why he attracted so many people from beginners to senior students throughout the world.
And you can see it in how he does anybody recognize this uke, by the way?
So
Tim?
Frank,
It is Frank.
Yeah, we should have a quiz on all the UKs.
Sabrina goes,
does anybody know who the
Sabrina.
first one, who was the first one on this video?
Yahe.
Yahe. Yeah.
Yahe?
Okay, who's this?
You know who that is?
That's the writer.
Auntie.
No,
No,
Sully.
Sully.
That's
Sully.
Who is now a very famous author, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. Mystery sort of stories.
At the time, he was a news writer for the San Diego paper.
Uh-huh. He goes down
And
hard.
he
He was at a certain, well, I guess he started Aikido when he was quite a bit older. And
Yeah.
But you can see how with each of his uke, Sensei responds to who they are and where they are.
He was a joy to watch in the children's class. He would sometimes, living there, he would walk in the middle of the, come into the middle of the kids' class and throw the kids around, and they would throw him around. And it was a delight.
Yeah.
It was a delight. If
Did
there
he
are
ever
questions
teach?
about-
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Yeah, did he ever teach the children's program?
Mm-hmm. He did.
Classes?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, who's this UK?
Sensei?
This is me.
Sensei.
Yeah,
This is Mother Me.
Mother me, yep.
that's
Sensei,
right.
you have the
I
best
did,
hair.
right?
There's no
I
doubt.
wasn't. No, I think this is after. But I mean, I think Brown must have been 2 or 3. I took some better
Yeah.
at me later on, but I did make me think when I was watching this morning, how, you would watch Sensei working some of his heavier, bigger students, right? And he'd been working with them a long time, and how much effort and energy he has to put behind throwing them. It's hard, and that's intimidating. It's like you are, like for me, it was like you come up and you don't quite know how it is that he's going to be working with you. And
No,
actually later on, I'm taking some ukemi, and he starts off, it's an ikkyo, very, very slowly like this. So you could really see what the movement is. And then he does it twice. And the second time around, he goes, poof, poof, like that. It's like you're gone. It's how he would teach us. It take you totally out of a comfortable framework of being into this, like, you know, like you're in midair kind of thing. You suddenly find yourself.
Yeah, don't anticipate, remember?
Don't
No,
anticipate. You
I
can't.
think this video is really interesting with his use of his hands.
Oh, I know.
Watch, you know, a sensei's extension of his hands constantly clear, and he's not grabbing. He's extending.
Inviting, actually, with those
really
hands.
inviting. Yeah, very.
His hands
clear.
have come up in a couple of our other Zoom sessions, actually, because with the one for me, I mean, that's all I could see was his hands somehow.
Yeah.
And then in the his dynamic sort of breathing exercises, he says, breathe in, inhale through the palms of your hands, and exhale through the palms of your hands, which puts your awareness in a whole different part of your body. It makes it feel very, very different.
Yeah, and his hands and his body are so woven together as one.
That's Josh.
Yeah.
And before that was Marianne,
Yeah.
who is now Shibata Sensei's wife.
And teaching mostly at Berkeley Aikido. I think she does most of the teaching.
She's the chief instructor, right?
Yes.
Mm.
You smell?
Yeah.
Ismael.
You know, we hadn't seen Ismail for a while, and Kristina and I were teaching a seminar in England with Steve Beecham. And the last day, Ismail came in and got on the mat, and it was really a joy to see him, having not been with him for a number of years.
I didn't recognize.
Yeah, and so
Become very large, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Well, it also was what, 30 years later? Or?
It was easy.
So in the middle of my class, he came up and took my ukemi, and we just started then throwing each other around. And it was, you know, both taking ukemi and both being nage. It was really a joy.
Uh-huh.
So I'd like to ask anyone that's watching this, do you feel like there's a difference in how you're being taught Aikido from what you're seeing? How maybe ukemi is different, or how, I don't know, how you see sensei working with other people, or is it just as you remember? Because a lot of you saw him later in his life.
Actually, not many in my dojo who are there now did see him. Tim.
Tim, yeah.
And I did.
But yeah.
Yeah, of course, Dick.
So
in the 80s?
In 2008, I guess it was, I had the opportunity to go down there once a week, Sensei's instruction, and sitting and watching the videos here is a much different thing. When you're down there, and I understand what you guys were saying, there's a certain intensity, and so you're kind of just, I don't know how to explain it. And you're just hoping that you survive the event. I don't mean survive like you're that scared. There's just a level of intensity. So at that time, I got to experience that and feel that. But I don't think I had the eyes enough at that time to really see what he was showing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. I totally understand that.
And if you want to see a little more of that intensity at some point, Coral, we could switch to play the first cue techniques and play them all.
Actually, I would love to, but I can't. We could go toward the end of this where he's actually doing more techniques.
Yeah.
Because it's because of my setup here.
Oh, okay.
The DVD
Daniel.
has to be downloaded onto my computer. It's
Oh,
complicated, and that took some time.
Okay.
We could
So
do it
you have
again, though.
right?
We could have another one. I think this is kind of really interesting to go through them all, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
I have all the videos on my laptop. If I was able to share my screen or something, just as an option.
Oh, well,
I have an observation.
yes.
Yeah.
I noticed that ukes do not protect using their offhand. And
No.
when I started in '98, and Sensei was adamant about always having your hand up there to protect, because you never know where a strike's going to come from. So
Right.
the uke, even though Sensei's got his martial thing going, the uke does not.
You know,
No.
Well, I would say, especially for this tape, for an instruction tape, I think he's showing just clearly the technique. And if in a certain period with Sensei, especially this period, if we were to put our hand up,
yeah.
he would
Right.
take advantage of that hand and change the technique.
He was against it.
And he would say at times that there's no blocking
No anticipation.
and anticipation in Aikido.
Then he
Well,
is.
I didn't
Then we
mean
get hit,
from
yeah.
a blocking point of view, but I meant, like, for instance, with Shianagi, when you go to strike at the end, your hand is always up there to block the strike. You
Right.
protect.
Right.
But the danger is that it is a block and it's not a parry. So you've got to absorb it anyway. Even if your hand goes up, it's not a block.
Oh,
If
right.
it's a block,
Yeah, exactly.
It's turned against you. So,
Right.
and
Yeah,
also
I
it was
think-
to do with how he taught us ukemi.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You've got to absorb the movement. You've got to see
There
it
you go.
coming. So you want to absorb with your whole body. And if you tend to have a habit of putting your hand out, the rest of you stay still.
Yeah, that's the point. He wanted us to move our center, not our arms or hands.
Yeah.
And of course, to do that, that was scary.
And it was also finding Sensei's timing when he was coming into throw, and you were accepting that energy and taking ukemi. That was such a fine line to find with him without getting hit, which we did many times. But eventually finding that energy between you before you were struck.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where you really notice Sensei's hands. Sensei's hands actually are inviting you to attack, and his hands are way back. It's like, so he's already started the movement. So
Yeah.
you come in to
Oh,
attack.
immediately.
Then partly, he's already there.
Yeah, very
Now,
much so.
DA, you may have noticed, asked Sensei what it felt like to take ukemi from O-Sensei. Do you remember that? Maybe you didn't catch that, but what was it like, Kristina and Rikko, what did it feel like to take ukemi from Chiba Sensei?
Well, I remember I was, I am a woman and lighter, and I felt like I really had to when I hesitated at all or had any kind of fear, that's when it didn't go well. But when I went in and gave myself fully, it was almost, he was not there, and the ukemi just felt so natural.
Right.
And like, I don't know who just said it, Tim, I think, just said it, that you felt like you lived through something, but not in a sense of fear. It was living through something so powerful that an amazing experience. But you had to hold on. If it was a grabbing technique, you had to hold on until the very, very, very end, and the trust that you had to put into Chiba Sensei's taking Ukemi for him was all, so pure, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I felt that that learning how to stay connected to him, like Kristina was referring to, in that process of being there in the center of that energy and movement, I learned how to surrender myself and trust that I would survive, but that I trusted him to take care of me. And so I could surrender myself to what was going on. And that's the biggest thing that I learned, whether it was slow or dynamic and fast. That was the central element for me about taking his ukemi.
We were already, I was 40 when I joined the Kenshusei program, and Rikko, you were 44. I mean, we were already, mature adults, yet I felt at times like a beginner. And I think that was another wonderful place that Sensei was able to give you that purity of freshness, the beginner's mind. It was like you had to go in that class every day with that.
Yeah,
and like Coral, you were
yeah.
saying, not anticipating, because you didn't know what was happening. You did not know.
Yeah, I came there with a lot of background in martial arts from most of my life, from boxing to karate to other Aikido styles. And when I got there, he said, you got to let all that go and start all over. And that was a struggle for me, and to finally let go of all of that past conditioning.
Yeah, my experience was similar. I didn't have so much. I had other Aikido before me, but not other martial arts. But yeah, that was the same. First of all, you had to let it all go, what you came in with. And I think it was often for those students who came in with something and couldn't let it go. They're the ones that didn't stay. Because when you can't let something go, Sensei would, he would, and resistance gets,
He would help
you get
you
hurt.
let it go.
Fun was always saying, let it go, let it go.
Yeah, well, I came from Yamada Sensei in my formative years of Aikido in New York, and he also threw us very hard, very dynamic, but the depth that Chiba Sensei allowed us to go into. He created that space where you could look into yourself and look into Aikido and experience something new about your training and yourself that I think was special. I think was very special.
You were a sandan, I think, when you came.
Yeah.
From
Unique to him, to any teacher.
Huh?
Well,
Exactly.
That was unique to him. This person. It was Chiba Sensei.
And the integration of weapons training throughout the entire curriculum, as even then and then especially, and of course now that hasn't changed, more or less. But that was so heavily emphasized. Everything. From zazen to weapons to boken jo to body arts, defense against weapons open-handedly. It all focused on the translation of yourself and the sword and your work within that frame of reference. Are there any particular questions that people might have about that early training that we had during those 4 years?
Well, I have a question. I don't know Well, more, there's a lot of talk about letting it go. And Kristina, earlier you mentioned that if you went to take a kemi from Chiba Sensei and you were fearful, it didn't go well, that you had to let yourself go for that. Did you find that he had a way of directing you? He would obviously understand when you're fearful and when you're letting it go, the difference between the two. Did you find that he was very good at detecting that and steering you to be not fearful? And I asked that. I had a specific experience with him once that I'll share, but I just wanted your thought on that.
Well, I think Tim, it could go two ways. It could be if you were fearful and stiff and pulling away, which I remember one moment where I went in to attack him, and for some reason I was fearful and I pulled away and he chased me across the mat. It's right. Okay. There are other times where I would go in and feel fearful, and I could feel a secure, being guided, like you were saying, and securely within that, I felt like I could let go within feeling supported, feeling like the strength and the dynamic situation was not going to hurt me if I went along with it. And yeah, I think it was almost a nurturing, feeling that you were supported, you were nurtured, and you were safe, which probably didn't look like that, but those feelings did come through. I mean, I think the other day, Coral, you mentioned that there were moments when Sensei could read your fear. Right. And one class, we were lined up, it was a weapons class, and he came out with a jo, and I said to myself, and that was my scariest, to take ukemi from Sensei with a jo was the hardest thing for me. And I just sat there, my eyes were focused down, and I was just saying to myself, don't call me, don't call me, don't call me. And of course, there it was, Kristina. And you just had to let it go, and it worked out fine. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great discussion. I didn't get to have that many experiences with him, but one particular evening, I was just scared, and he called me up for ukemi, and it was with a tanto. And I don't really remember exactly the technique. I just remember being so fearful, and I wasn't doing what he wanted me to. And at one point, I ended up with the tanto into my chest. And at that point, everything was just no more thinking about it. Just react and do what it was gone. It was instantly. I just had to do what he was directing me to do, if that's the right way to put it.
You were in the moment.
And it's also, I think, getting to the point, Sensei would take you to the point where you were so tired, you were so exhausted, and you just gave it up, and then you were refreshed with that next part of the energy that then came through you. At least I felt that at times where I just felt I couldn't go anymore, and then all of a sudden I realized I didn't have anything blocking me from
the way.
Nothing in the way. I had got myself out of the way.
Well, that was the immersion of during those 4 years and being in that program, working, training day and night. That immersion allowed for these possibilities. Of self-exploration and exploration of this martial art. I think, to add for me, by trade, I have two professions: as an Aikido teacher, practitioner, and as a shrink. And as a shrink, I'm a neuroclinical psychologist over the years, and still am. And I have always felt that those 4 years was like being immersed in a psychotherapy process day and night for 4 years.
Yeah.
It's true. I always felt like Sensei was working with the inside of me rather than the outside. And,
Yeah, that's great.
You know, I can recall a period that was just so emotional for me back in the, I don't know, mid-80s probably, in University Avenue. And all I could do when I got on the mat was try not to cry. And it was like, and the more you held that back on trying not to cry, the worse it would become, right? Because you bottled this up. And this was quite, it went on, this was a period for me, it went on for quite a long time, but I didn't want the Sensei to stop training with me. I wanted to, at some point, work it through as I was moving, you know, as I was going. And he called me up for Ukemi. I could feel myself starting to tear up, and I guess it's fear, it's, you know, everything. I didn't want to be hurt. It was like all of these things kind of came into play. And I just said to him, dude, don't stop working with me. It's just that came out, and he completed the demonstration, and you know, it's like I broke through at some point, and then suddenly what I had been doing that was just such a struggle became easy. And and I think that happens with your Ukemi at a certain point too. When you do let go, my God, that's the safest place for you to be, actually. And when you realize that, it helps you to let go. It's like you don't want to put any resistance in the way of, you know.
You know, that's interesting.
Yeah, you know, but at this, and I think at the same time, those things will come up again in different ways. It's not that we let it go and it's gone forever, and because I think each intense encounter can bring things up in another way, and at least that's what I felt in the program, where it could come up again. Sensitivities and being vulnerable was present. Always present, and you know, not only for us, I think Chiba Sensei was vulnerable as well, and he at times showed us that, and it reminds me of you mentioned the other day when Didier Sensei was talking. I know you were watching a film of Yamaguchi Sensei, and I remember a time. Well, it was six weeks after I started Aikido in 1975. I went to England and went to a seminar, and it was the first time I saw Chiba Sensei and Yamaguchi Sensei. And I was a total beginner, and we took a class from Yamaguchi, and the next day we did a class with Chiba Sensei, and basically the whole class was Chiba Sensei trying to understand what Yamaguchi Sensei was doing and how he was doing it, and what the whole feeling was. And actually there were tears in Chiba Sensei's eyes. And just going back to that of him constantly trying to figure things out and working himself. And to me, as a beginner, it was shocking. It was really shocking, but it was such a vulnerable time for him, and I saw him as a human being, and not just this bigger than life sensei.
Well, I think we made him bigger than life. You know, the tendency is that the people around him to put him up there because he was so unusual. But you know, he never put himself there. And,
No, that's true. That's true.
I have a memory that might be interesting to, particularly maybe to Rikko, but I don't know, not quite sure if it actually related to the time when I went through this crying period on the mat, or whether it was one of the other times when things were going on. But I can remember seeing Sensei. Actually, was in his home, and I guess I must have had a meeting with him or something like that. And I said to him, you know, Sensei, I feel like I'm breaking down. And he said, do it, let it go. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know, let it, whatever it is, let it out. It's okay. And there were so many opportunities like that when we were training, you know, that would bring up these feelings. I mean, as a woman working with guys, you know, kind of guys I wouldn't have probably got to know in my daily life outside of the dojo, you know, it's like, or people who were kind of felt so resistant or, you know, so sure of themselves or something, or the people who are always telling you, do it this way, or, you know, quietly. And, you know, that brings up all kinds of stuff in you, you know, and I suppose in the end that's resistance too. And, you know, so, you know, slowly you just let people be who they are. This is it. That's fine. I've got all kinds of places and ways to go. And it's fine. I don't have to take them into me. And I think that's kind of like a major letting go in Aikido. It's just finding out who you are so you can be yourself. That authentic person, we've talked about the authentic person. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to your point that this format, this venue that we trained in, allowed us to explore and accept ourselves and others, and that really was an expansive process for us. It took us in many realms and many depths and through many layers of not only who we were, but who we were connected to both on the mat and off the mat.
Yeah. I mean, Sensei was, especially here, he was ever present. There wasn't a moment where he wasn't, you didn't feel his essence. You didn't, even if he wasn't in the room, you knew he was somewhere around, and he was watching us constantly, you know, on different levels. We would teach a class, or we would be in a class, and I remember he would pass me these pieces of paper, these notes that would say, why did you do this in this technique? Think about it. Or why in Iriminage there is no grabbing, you know, and they were like little koans. And I would just like be puzzled.
How he communicated with you, Kristina. That's really quite lovely. I had no idea. That's really a nice way to point things out.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Notes from the teacher.
Notes from the teacher.
Well, you know, whenever it's, you could have a class of people, and Chiba Sensei would walk in, and each one of those people in that class would feel that he was watching them, each one of them. And whenever you got to work with him, or when he worked with you, you were the only person, you and he were the only person there in the whole world. That was the kind of focus. And
you never felt invisible.
Yeah.
No,
Richard, even if you wanted to be.
I have a question. Well, I don't know if it's a question or what, but I know it's been brought up a lot of times that there was a great sense of trust with Chiba Sensei knowing your level and always being sensitive to who he was working with. And I think that even when he was challenging you and there might have been fear on your end, but it was still a learning experience. And I'm just wondering, because I'm sure there was that sense of trust between the people who trained regularly together, and I think that's something that we develop as a community within a dojo. But what happens when you work with somebody completely new, you don't know, you don't trust them? How do you kind of overcome that? because it's not always fear, but it's this sense of, I think, uncertainty that sometimes I have when I face somebody completely new, and especially when they don't seem to be paying attention to you. So any tips on that, maybe?
Vulnerability.
You know, Sarah, I think that was one of my first questions in Aikido training, because I would feel, you know, coming up in the New York Aikikai, there were a lot of big guys, not putting men down in any way, just, and I didn't know, as a smaller person, I didn't know how to handle these situations. I felt, well, I think a lot of it, I felt vulnerable, but a lot of it came from my dancing background, where I would try to be as strong or turn as many times, or, you know, so I would, in the beginning, push my way through it and try to muscle it, and that didn't work. You know, and as time went by, I think the most valuable thing that I learned to do was get out of the way. And like I said before, it was like getting out of the way of myself, that self that wanted to push through, that wanted to be able to overcome that energy. And it was getting out of the way in a sense where getting off the line, but really mostly getting my mind to let go of that feeling, and let go of that need to fight the situation, and in some way maybe give the power back to that person, and kind of losing it here.
It was okay to be out of control in some sense.
Exactly. It was okay to be out of control, and in knowing it was okay to be out of control gave me the trust to go, okay, I'm going to trust this.
There is a caveat here, and that is when things feel out of control and to the point of dangerous, that's an appropriate time to set a boundary, a healthy boundary, a safe boundary, and move on to someone else.
Yeah.
You always have that choice.
Yeah, I think I learned that, saying thank you and bowing out.
It's important.
And sometimes I think people on the mat don't feel like they're able to do that and stay in a situation that may not be healthy.
But they're stuck.
Yeah, that you don't have a choice. To always, you know, realize on the mat you do have choices. In life, you always have, I say, 3 choices. Maybe feeling sometimes that we don't have a choice can leave us in that situation. Does that help, Sarah, at all?
Yes, no, it does.
Yeah.
I think there's many ways to kind of deal with it. You know, one is working on yourself, and then one maybe just leaving, and yeah, no, I think it's good to know that there are options, and there isn't just one way that you're supposed to follow.
Yeah.
And actually, in a way, you can see that all of your Aikido training is leading you to the point where it's not going to bother you later on. It's like we're all sort of developing, more greater awareness to pick up on things, energies that are coming toward us, maybe that you don't want to engage with, or give you, oh, I can move, I can get off the line here. That's the first thing. I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to take it into me either. I'm not going to let this person's energy distract me or disturb me.
Or does that other person know that that's what their energy they're giving off?
They usually don't actually in Aikido.
They don't.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they usually don't.
So once when you realize that, it takes a big load off you somehow. It's like, give them their problems, let them recognize that they have issues, but they're their issues. They're there. They're theirs.
Carl, I would like to kind of make a plug for you know, what we're watching in the background here.
Yeah.
You know, these guidelines that of 5th through 1st Kyu. They're more than just Kihon Foundation Basic Waza. They're also many variations on techniques that is incorporated way beyond 1st Kyu into Yudansha level training. And I think that Kristina and I, over the years, in the last 25 years with our dojo, we've recommended, if there are 2 videos that we have encouraged our students to study, it's the one you're showing now, and it's also the one that we did with George and Coral. I used your camera to do the DVD on the Joe 36 Joe.
Oh,
and I think
all right.
this was your camera that we did this with, remember? On University Avenue.
But I thought I thought I was holding the camera.
You were.
Oh yes, I was. That's right. Yes, because.
And then
right.
George and I and Rob, you know, Rob, of course, put all these together for us. He and his partner. But I think these 2 sets of instructional videos are probably some of the richest information that we have available for ourselves.
Right.
And I never tire of watching them and what I still learn from this. Anyway.
Right. I agree with you. I mean,
I don't know about
even now I see different things when I you know, that I watched the first time I watched these.
Yeah, I don't know about the availability anymore of the technical guidelines of this being sold right now. I don't know. There was a reason the money went to Sensei's family, and it's not being produced and available currently. And
you know, it's a pity it can't be accessed on the Birankai website. You know, we have a video library. It should be one of those, you know, it's for access for teachers, to be accessed by teachers, but that should be on there, really.
Yeah, I will follow that up with Rob and Daryl.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, not just the summer camps, you know, there's other materials.
Right.
Well, one of the things that, coming back to looking at this, though, really, is the power of Sensei's cutting down. It's huge, and I mean, Josh was relatively short, but same height as Sensei. But someone like Yahe or Frank, who's so much taller, that you can see him how he draws the energy from using his whole body, but he's also always taking the balance there, and then cuts right down. It's like a stone falls, drops right to the ground. I mean, so powerful.
Sometimes it fell through the ground.
Yeah, it did actually. I can remember that. I can remember getting up from, actually, I think, what was it? Can't remember exactly, but coming down so hard, I got up and I thought, no, you threw me too hard that time, Sensei. It wasn't necessary, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not one of the big guys.
Well, again, it's that idea that he was a master in many things, and one of the references here is that he knew how he could push us, take us to our limits, and maybe even encourage us to go further.
Yeah.
And that's maybe an example.
I think that was from the very beginning, really. He always took you a little past where you thought you could go, where you had your boundaries. They were already placed there. Right? And he'd always take you just a little bit beyond. So that's how you grow, you know. Right. And, you know, to the point where he throws you and you find yourself in midair for the first time in your life. You've never, you know, been thrown like that. I mean, what an experience. And suddenly something comes alive in you. It's like, I've got to survive this. I have to survive this. I can't, Sensei can't pluck me out of the air, you know? And there's just this moment of realization, or something happens where you get in touch with a much deeper part of yourself. And then, you know, you take that into the next thing that you do, and, you know, and slowly you grow.
This
He had
is
an
where,
ability. What?
this is where
Sorry?
this is where I learned to laugh.
Ah,
Seriously, you know, I get right in the middle of this thing. When somebody gets inside of me, I start giggling, you know, because it feels so cool.
Yeah.
Feels so good. Yeah. He had an amazing way of extending time. So time seemed, as you were taking Ukemi, it extended the time span.
Yeah, I think what I got from Nakazono Sensei when I first started training in Aikido back in the early 70s in Santa Fe, I saw the real application of it, you know, being a Kenshusei, in about what Nakazono Sensei, who was our spiritual advisor later on in San Diego, was the concept of Nakaima, about being the present, being the interior moment of the intersection between infinity and
The now.
and the now, you know, eternity and infinity, and being, you know, present, and I that intersection was ever more dramatic, you know, being on the mat with Sensei. That was particularly that concept of Nakaima sure sunk in for all of us.
Yeah.
even if you couldn't do it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
You know, there's a point
You
that
see it
Kristina was,
first.
you know, Carl, we were wanting to make a mention of something about training with Sensei, how being so very close, you know, living nearby and by his home and his family and the dojo, how accepting he was of families and couples to be inclusive. And I think that's an important point about what maybe needs to be re-emphasized more and more is the acceptance of family and the commitment that people make to run a dojo or to train in a dojo, and that he as a teacher encouraged us to take care of our family and have them be a part of our lives in what we were doing. And that was pretty exceptional.
Yeah, I agree. Well, also of family and of women, you know, he used us all. He didn't treat us differently.
It evolved like with women's camp for, you know, starting a camp for women training.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a whole other subject, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and remember he encouraged us to study children's classes. Remember you were a part of that. And you know, he didn't stop at any boundary. He kept encouraging us to explore the applications of what we were doing with this martial art and on and off the mat. Yeah.
You know, one of the questions that has come up in one of these sessions we've had was, or a comment anyway, I'm not even, maybe I made it, I'm not sure, but that these days in our dojos, it's so different now than it was then. And that, you know, that our students, they are family people, they are professional people, they work, you know, they have a certain, and yet they're devoted to Aikido, and they have a certain amount of time that they can honestly give to their practice. And so in a way, their practice is slower, you know, the practice is slowed down. And as a teacher, you do your best to kind of incorporate everything and give everybody everything that you can, or that they, that they need. But this was at such an intense, fast pace when at this particular period. People did come into the school and they did train all day and every day, and it does something to your bodies. It accelerates the process. So that's what we're working with now, I think, on the whole, in Aikido. The beauty of it is still there, and you are still working with that. But it takes, it takes longer. And that's why I think we have students who will always be doing Aikido. It's sort of very deeply ingrained in them, but they'll be doing it in their way, in their time. And it's always there for them. So it's something for everybody.
Well, I think that's what is the beauty of Aikido, as well as it accepts all, and you're going to have a different outcome whether you're doing every class morning, noon, and night every day of the week, or you're only able to do 3 classes a week. The desires, of people are different, and the needs are different, but it's open to any aspect of that. I felt really fortunate to be able to be at the dojo morning, noon, and night. What a great time in my life to be able to do that. The same thing with dance. You had to put your whole self into it constantly. I think the world is spinning a little faster now. So do we have that time to do it? Maybe this will slow the world down a little, and we'll have more time to, do the things we love or that are meaningful, and help each other and share more with what we're going through now.
I would just like to ask a couple of people who are here who are very experienced Aikidoists now, have been doing it for many, many years, but actually came through very different teachers and have been involved here and engaged in sort of Chiba Sensei Aikido and my Aikido for quite a long time now. And Garrett was one. I don't know if he's disappeared. Maybe he had to leave. Are you there, Garrett? I don't see
I'm
you.
Here. Yep, I'm here, Sensei.
I don't know why. I don't have everybody. I was just wondering what it feels like to you to see Chiba Sensei here. It's such a different approach from your certainly early training, right, with Saotomi Sensei or through his school.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be able to see this footage. I wish I had an opportunity to be in his presence more and to train more with him. I only got to see him a couple of times really in the years. But it's, certainly very familiar to me to watch his Aikido and the experiences that I've had with Saitomi Sensei and many of his senior students. So it's just great to see another interpretation and really highlighting the principles of Aikido and really what works and what is there to explore and continue to study. It's awesome.
Right. God, I'm glad you feel that way.
Garrett, what would you say are the main differences, maybe besides technique, but in the essence from?
Great question. The one thing about Saitomi Sensei is you could really see his dynamic movement in just the way that he would move. Very soft, very clear. And Chiba Sensei, it's all there. It's just hidden more. His appears to be so much more martial and so strong, but yet I can see the same dynamic movement that's going on, where Saitomi Sensei is very evident when you watch him. So it's less the differences and more kind of the similarities when I look at it. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. And Yuho is the other person. Are you still there, Yuho?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yes, Sensei. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
Yeah. How is it for you to see Chiba Sensei? You trained with a Shihan for many years.
Yeah, it's kind of the elements which are kind of different, but a lot of it is actually same. So that kind of striking, but it's I never get the chance to feel Sensei. So I'm watching this and just seeing the energy there. So that that's kind of makes me envy you guys. So that you have a wonderful chance in there. So that kind of my real growth in Aikido happened in Singapore with the Harry Sensei in there, and he was at his old age, like mid-60s, when I met him first time. I think his training has been in the past really like this. He started on 62, so that and he never trained with O Sensei, but he trained with Abe Sensei and others, and he's like magic now. He is really good. So that when you go for him, he can take your power away. So that he thinks he let me attack his little finger. So like take as hard as you can, and few moments later, I find myself flying around. So I still don't know how he did it. So, and he spoke all of that. He spoke that we have big egos, all of them, and he said, let it go. It's exactly the same thing here. So that's so his techniques were slightly different in kind of how they look, but I think the feeling is the same. He worked a lot on his center, so everything was a center line. So like Iriminage, we do it here, so that it's towards your kind of out from your hips. But his Iriminage was, when he did it like for real, it was just center, and it's like it's really tough. There's no way you can go anywhere else than just fly on that. So that but it was soft. So I can see the same here. So that it's amazing. So that and yeah, the intensity and also the same that it's kind of, it needs to be for real. So that the attack, the interaction, so it's a real thing. You can practice the movement and kind of train your body on so, but to really train Aikido, so he always spoke it that the attack needs to be real. It doesn't matter what the technique is. It's almost better to practice very simple things, but do it for full mind and body, because then you can start to build that trust. So that you know that, okay, that something's going to happen, but I'm not going to get hurt here. So once you get over that, yeah, you go totally different level in your training. So that's yeah, it's been the toughest thing for me is, and Sensei knows this very well, because I didn't really train weapons for like 20 years. So and what training I had, so was a bit different, basic Aikikai, Northern European style. So that's been a huge undertaking me. So work in progress there, but then really starting to see how the sword, how the knife, how the blade could go, how the jaw could go in these techniques. What's really happening in there? Why you move like you move, where you go. So and why sometimes Uke actually needs to feel that okay, that if I don't move certain way, my belly gets cut or things like that. So that's really fascinating here. So that's a big learning for me. So that a lot to do there. So but yeah, really this is a fantastic video to see.
Great. Hey, Nico, what are you feeling right now?
Oh, I think he's like, I respect how he's very concentrated throughout the whole technique, because I usually I feel like I can't be like concentrated for this long. It's very surprising to see how concentrated he is throughout the whole technique, and how he's you could tell he's giving it his all the whole time.
Oh, there I am again. Sorry. Oh, anyway, sorry, Nico. Keep going.
Oh, that was all.
Yeah. Well, maybe because you're young, it's harder for young people to concentrate these days, isn't it, so much?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've made a really good start, so I hope you're able to keep it up, keep it going.
Thank you.
Nico would have come to summer camp this year, but of course we've canceled it, so. Yeah.
How long have you been training, Nico?
I started training when I was 7, but I lived in China, so it was like a whole different thing. Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
with Coral Sensei?
Yeah. That was,
Yeah.
so long ago.
When did you start with me? When she was little.
Yeah.
Young, much younger.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sarah, you were asking about, you know, what to do with bigger people or feeling with someone that you don't trust or you know, get into that space. I just had this idea or what I was doing in the beginning was, and I think it was Chiba Sensei that helped me with this, was attemi. So I would, you know, if I felt someone coming in too close, as a small person, I would just give an attemi, and it really helps to, you know, keep your center and not let them come into your space and get their balance in that initial moment.
Yeah.
So that's what helped me a lot, and then I could quiet that down a little more when I felt more secure.
Right.
Yeah. So don't be afraid of the attemi.
Well,
When you need it.
Taking you attemi from Juba.
Yeah, exactly. He helped
One
me.
experience to me where he did not pull his punch and it went right into my eyeball. I felt my eyeball kind of like sink in and then come back out again. And like, oh, Jesus, that's Juba. Thank you. Okay. I won't be working with him next time.
You don't have to go that far.
No, the things you remember, though, you know, that come up.
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
myriad of experiences, you know, little things that built up into the big thing that you do. And
Yeah.
yeah. Is Sabrina still here? Because I'm not seeing everybody's pictures, but she was
here.
Hi, you.
Yes, hi.
Oh, hi there.
Hi, Sabrina.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning.
What do you think of this?
Well, I find these videos really interesting because I've like grown up hearing about Chiba Sensei, and he was always kind of this like mythological feature. Just so kind of seeing these videos really humanizes him. And it's really interesting to see how he changes his technique for each different uke.
Well, that's what, but this is a training kind of tape. So he's going through demonstrating different techniques. Or do you mean doing the same technique with different people?
Yeah, I just mean like, I find his behavior to be different. Even though they're like different techniques, the way he moves is different for each person.
Oh, yes.
So he's
exactly.
adapting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's sensitive to that. And you see, he has to put more power into throwing some of these big guys because he's got this huge weight, right? It's very different than throwing someone like Kristina and me. We're like feathers. So how you can be really connected, you know, and give him your send and give him everything. What you give him is all of yourself. That's what's so important. But if you drag in your akemi, then actually the sensei has to really actually force, in a way, a technique because they have to make it happen. But when you get to a certain stage with your akemi, you really do blend and you kind of go together until you're out and you're expressed. And so yes, and you know, he was a brilliant teacher, and yeah, he felt each person you should feel differently when you're throwing them, you know, when you're nage. You should feel them, and you know, you don't have to do the same thing with the same force to everybody. That's why teachers lead, really, rather than as Didier was saying, you don't teach, you're leading by your example. You're taking people along because you're still, this is what I loved about what he had to say, you're still working on yourself. We all are, each of us are students of Aikido. Doesn't matter whether we're Shihan, who we are, we are still working on ourselves, and what you can gather from that and take into your own life is fabulous, if it helps you, and often you don't realize that you are taking it in. So, but you have an example there. If you come in, in your daily life, you have a certain situation and you suddenly find you can deal with it in a certain way that you couldn't before because of something that's happened in Aikido. Wow.
Yeah, Chiba Sensei, I remember, Carl, he would always say, especially when we were talking a lot about Shuha-ri, where, he was Ri. He said, not anywhere near Shuha-ri. I'm Ha. I'm still there in Ha. And
Ha ha.
Ha. And it's really about our training ourselves and being with ourselves. Who is it? Tada Sensei talks about 90% of your training is you, personal. It's you. It's not whether you're your teacher or your the person you're working with. You are working yourself
Right.
personally, even in this time, by ourselves.
I mean, how many times in your training would you come up to a point where you really wanted to just leave, want to go away? I don't want to come back to the next class. This is just too much, overwhelming. And, when it really comes down to it, you keep doing it. It's like you can't really stop. And so you have to take yourself through those difficult periods and you come through them. And when you realize you can come through the difficult periods, you have a little bit better, I'd say, control of life or something, a little more confidence, a little more whatever.
It's not the technique. It's not the technique. It is this, you're talking about, everyone's talking about this journey, this process that goes, has no end to it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, it really is. And technique is just a structure that we've been given that can, that can help us get there. I mean, keep moving.
Keep breathing.
You can do it in dance, you can do it in other disciplines as well. Aikido is just a particular way to go about it.
And I think it's this essential centeredness and connectedness that we have with ourselves and each other in Aikido and our Aikido community, both here and abroad, that nurtures us, continues to nurture us.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, maybe that's a good place to close the session. Unless anyone else has any other questions, or this has been great.
I look forward to seeing all of you sometime soon. Be together again and train together. And thank you, Coral.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming on
connect.
today and sharing your stories and insights. It's really been a pleasure. So.
Thank you, Garrett.
Garrett, I love your background there.
Thank you.
I am one.
What is it?
You're one.
You're glowing.
UFO. It's a UFO.
I liked this background last week.
What was it?
It was my prison cell.
Oh, I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Oh, good to hear you're out.
Yeah.
Okay,
Awesome.
everyone.
Great. Thanks for joining us. It was great to hear the stories. It must have been just an amazing time, and it's fun to hear the different perspectives from people who got to be there during those times. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. We're happy to share it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I look forward to sharing more in person as we get the opportunity in the near future to, talk story, as our friends say in Hawaii, talk story more, you know, share more.
Nice.
I agree.
All
All
right.
righty. Lots of love to everybody. Stay
Thank
safe.
you.
Take
Thank
care.
you so much, Varjan Sensei.
See you soon.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.